consulting business.
Awesome. And last but not least, Neil.
Lucky at last. Such a pleasure to be here and to meet everybody. My name is Neil Eisdell, and I'm just started my own journey into consulting too, specifically with startups focusing on post-sales enablement and operations. I have a deep passion for customer success, where I spent the last few years at LinkedIn, and again, Talent Solutions is a similar journey to Sally, and a big passion for people-led leadership and building things at scale.
Awesome, thanks. So we've got a bunch of questions in around kind of leadership and startup, but I think we've all recorded videos over the last 2 weeks together. I think you guys all sort of came to mind in that startup and leadership journey, either having worked in startups or just decided to go down the startup journey. So I think there should be a good variety of kind of thoughts as we go around. So I'm pretty excited for this. In terms of questions that came in, I think if we kick off with, what are the best leadership lessons that you've learned during your career? The good and the bad. Actually, it was a good, bad, and ugly, but I added that bit on myself. If we start there, I don't know who wants to kick off. Yeah.
I might kick off. I think you learn what leadership is through experiences. When things are sort of really challenging, I think my definition or my inclination to adopt certain behaviors was definitely born out of people still that I refer to as the people or the person that I want to be when I'm big, just exemplary in really sort of challenging instances. And I think it's really, really important to work with those people and also work with people that you never want to work with again, because I think particularly those instances are the times that you actually learn more than you think you do. But what it does do is develop a real sort of conviction for what you will and won't stand for. And I think that is part of a leadership experience is mandatory. It's absolutely essential, because if you don't have any of those experiences, you won't be that passionate about behaving differently or treating people in a different light. So I think it's really essential to work with incredible people, and also to work with people where the experience wasn't as wonderful at the time. It's so incredibly valuable all the same.
Completely agree. I think sometimes you need to know what you don't want to know what you do want.
I might add in, it's really important to be really open and authentic with your team, because when you're leading from a place where you've got kind of a canned message and you're hiding your authenticity or your vulnerability, people notice that, and they tend to shy away instead of stepping in. When you can be open and real, and I find this a lot with new leaders, that they feel like they need to know everything. So they're trying to come at it from, I'm up here and I'm I've got everything going on and I can't show you any weakness. They tend to struggle because inside they've got this imposter syndrome going on, feeling like I don't necessarily need anything, but I have to act like I do. And if instead you can just be open with your team, the reason you've hired people is because they're good at what they do, and appreciate them for what they're doing, and ask the questions and work on it together. Say, I'm not sure how to approach this, or let's figure it all out together. You actually come to a better result.
Yeah.
Can I ask you a question on that, Julie? Can I just, sorry, Sally, but can I just, when I think you're absolutely right. I think you have to show that you don't know everything. Do you think though, and this is something that I think I've learned over the years, do you think it's important that you remain calm? I think that I don't know, I think that you don't necessarily have to know everything, but I think that you need to show a level of calmness, because I think people look to the leader to calm themselves. And if you show panic, well, it's never a great sign. So I think, do you think it's a combination of, yes, being vulnerable, I don't know what the heck's going on, but let's be calm about it? Do you think that's an important?
100%, Steve. Thanks for adding that in. Yeah, if you've got a leader at the top that's frenzied, that goes all the way down. Everybody's feeling the panic. And I think it's something that definitely comes across, and it calms the rest of the team as well. So there's a difference between being calm and control and not knowing everything, and working with the team that way and just being frenetic.
Yep.
I think that's important as long as it's not in compromise and you don't have a work mask on. I think that authenticity piece that Julie was talking about is so important. If you're allowing, and it is I see it as a, want to stay away from like a God-given right, but it's certainly a human right to have a safe and inclusive place to go to work where you're inspired and challenged every day by being yourself. And I think if you're able to be your authentic self, that natural calm tends to just play out organically in itself anyway. And then you'll see that flow right throughout your team. That's certainly been my experience. And coming back to an earlier comment around, you learn from the behaviors you don't want to see in yourself. And I, having sat under somebody for 9 years in the most toxic work environment, certainly the most formative years of my leadership journey to date. And I'm grateful for that experience because I wasn't able to be my authentic self, and it taught me a lot.
Yeah, I noticed, Neil, you obviously worked at LinkedIn. So did I for a time as well, but our paths didn't actually cross. But I personally learned a lot of leadership lessons at LinkedIn, just the way they invest in people. And I definitely took that, the values and the leadership lessons from LinkedIn to my next business, and really was very aware of my leadership style. And really wanting to invest in the people, particularly in startup land, right? We know how hard it is. And if you're bringing people, a lot of people came across to work for me, and I felt, and they were very invested in me, which was a little bit of a burden at the same time, because I knew they were, investing in me and what lay ahead. And I think it's really important to be vulnerable, but also make sure you've got a very clear mission and vision ahead, so that everybody knows and everybody's going in the same direction and knows what lies ahead and what we have to do to sort of keep moving forward, so to speak. So my number one lesson is invest in the people, personally.
I think just a question for me before we maybe move on to the next one. I think tying that investing in your people's number one, the calm point that Steve had, and the authenticity piece we talked about. A lot of the problems and challenges I hear from even my time at LinkedIn, but right through all the startups, is people burning the candle at both ends to keep up with that pace, especially if you're in a startup that is experiencing some exponential growth. How are some of you maybe dealing with that level of pressure from your teams or from the customers that you work with?
I was definitely one of those, without a doubt. Yeah, I've never sprinted so hard for so long. One of the questions earlier was about, when have you sprinted in your career most? And for me, it was the last 3 years at Expert 360. People think, high growth, fast growth. That doesn't always necessarily mean easy. And particularly, we were new to market. We were a new category. There was so much education to be done, as well as actual selling. So for me, I felt like it was 3 years that I was with the business, still very, very connected. And I felt like it was a 3-year marathon, truly. Yeah, which is very hard, isn't it? Because I also was trying to keep teaching of, the corporate athlete and, work-life balance, yet I wasn't leading from the front in any way, shape or form in that.
I am reading a great book on this called Why We Sleep. And if anyone hasn't read it, I really suggest they do. It's absolutely terrifying. I am someone that tends to work better late at night. And that's because no one calls me, including Laura. It's one of the few times when I'm free. And I get so much done in what is a relatively short period of time. But what invariably happens is it means I just sort of work all day with a very brief period in the afternoon where I run around with the children, which is obviously, not exactly relaxing either. But having started to read this book, which 3 of my friends told me I should read, I would recommend anyone out there read this book. I'm only a little way through, but so far I'm absolutely terrified at what it's telling me. And I think it's probably a good lesson for everybody in there to go and read that, particularly in startup world.
Yeah, if I can add in, that's something that I deal with a lot with clients, and it's not knowing when to stop. working. And especially as a leader, when you're feeling you're responsible for a team, you keep going. But being able to take that time out, have that self-care, refresh, you're actually coming better and you're able to be a better leader and you're better at your business. When we're in that kind of burnout and flight and fright mode, we're only using a percentage of our brain and our capability. And is that really where you want to be making decisions for your company, or do you want to be doing it when you're at full throttle? So make sure that you recharge. I don't have my phone sitting next to me. I usually hold that up and say, what do you do with this at night? And everybody said, well, I recharge it. And so if you're doing that for your phone, why don't you do it for yourself?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's great. The only sort of build for me is I think it's really important not to push hard all of the time. I think you've got to sort of pick your moments where you really have high expectations of your team and you make that really clear, you know, and there will be some sort of projects that demand more of your team than others. And obviously strategically you can kind of agree what those are. But I've often found that when we push kind of our team, or we ask our team, you know, like we share right from the outset, guys, this is important, this is why. And I think everybody sort of rallies around the importance of something where we really need to push hard right from the outset. So it's no surprise, you know, maybe the longer hours aren't a surprise. You know, the duration of that sprint is no surprise. Everybody kind of really understands what we're trying to achieve from the outset. And then when it's over, then it is time to recharge, you know. So we try and sort of give the team either time in lieu, you know, like, why don't you take a long weekend, and you know, we kind of schedule that where it's still feasible for, you know, everything else to kind of keep running. But we give our team then time to kind of just regroup and recharge. And I think that's really important, because the next time we ask them to go again, they're like, yeah, we've had time to recharge, and we get that there's going to be some you know, compensation is not the right word, but some acknowledgement that we're gonna be burning, you know, the midnight oil. So they're okay with that, because they get that there's some reprieve at the end.
I absolutely love that, CK. That's amazing. That goes so far with teams. I've seen the same. And the other thing to do is to remember to celebrate. Celebrate the wins. And especially in startup land, people always have that next goal that they need to hit. That's a small goal on the way to the big goal. And if you wait to that really big goal, that burns people out, because you're never getting to the end. So if you can set some goals along the way, and celebrate those wins, it's really important too.
Don't forget to celebrate the failures too. I've actually started doing this with my kids when they fall over, is to cheer. Is, you know, remember what you learned from that experience and how you pick yourself up, and to celebrate that and learn from it and move on, especially in startup. I think, you know, we've talked about imposter syndrome on this call already. And I think that analysis paralysis, or the fear of failure, also holds some people or some teams back as well. So that celebration mentality around failures and lessons is key.
I like celebration around failures. I think it kind of leads nicely on. There's a couple that you could go with, but I think I'm going to go around with one that's got, like, in a world where it's changing so quickly, and I think obviously the last few months have shown that, how do we help people be their best selves, and how can we help our teams with all of this?
I'll have a crack. One of the best bosses I ever had was a lady called Leanne Kaywood, really sort of early on in my career. I think I fell in love with advertising because I happened to find myself in her care, as in like in her team. She was incredibly demanding, had the highest expectations, still has, of anyone I know. But what she did do is she made me recognize my own potential. She made that so clear. And I still, you know, when I see talent around me and I go, oh my God, I'm going to be working for this human one day. Like, this person is just so incredibly talented and smart. I think when you do that, there is just magic that is like you cannot extract under any other circumstances other than being very clear about the fact that you believe in that person and that talent. And that's quite remarkable. And I experienced that firsthand, and the power of that. I think I have a career And I have sort of like, you know, I look back on sort of the last 2 decades and go, wow, I would never have achieved just a fraction of any of those things had it not been for her believing in me and making that very clear to me. So while she was kind of, you know, quite hard on me and sort of had, you know, kept raising the bar, I loved her. I loved working for her, and I loved knowing that I could contribute. And I try and do that, you know, with people that I sort of encounter along my career path. And I only say that because I think that's even more powerful in these situations, you know, and the year that we've had, because we are so not in control. The only thing that we can really do is kind of believe in our people and the people around us, because that unlocks a whole range of things where people can be far more imaginative, and they want to rise to the occasion and kind of master the challenge that is set before them if there's that kind of belief. So I think that can be really valuable.
I think also taking a long-term view and thinking about people in the long term and trusting in them, as you were saying, CK, but also from the long-term view, instead of saying, what does my business need right now? And, oh, we need to cut staff. You know, we don't have enough money. If you have a longer term view and you think about your employees, you sit everybody down, you have a conversation and say, listen, here's where we're at. We know it's not going to be forever. You know, how can we come up with a better solution, which might be everybody goes down to 4 days and we don't need to let anybody go. So it's really adjusting to what's going on right now and looking at it with new eyes and looking at it. How can we take care of our people? Like you said, CK, how can we trust in them to help come up with some really strong solutions, and looking at that longer term.
Okay, then the other one that leads to this, which I quite liked, was like, do you think that leadership is a natural quality or it's something that people can be taught?
Both, for sure. Both. I think some people get there quicker than others, and that's not always a good thing. Sometimes the people who take the longest end up being the best leaders, as with a lot of things in life. I think everyone has strengths and weaknesses. I think sometimes people have strengths that they don't recognize. Or, as we've touched on already a few times, the imposter syndrome, they don't act on them because they don't believe in them. And that's where CK talks about belief and helping them believe in themselves. And, you know, it's very much, leadership is constantly, it's an evolution, I think. And I think, like anything in life, you probably learn more from the people that you're leading than they learn from you. I genuinely believe that. And I've done a couple of mentor programs, which wasn't something I particularly wanted to do. And I've loved them. And I've learned more than I could have possibly dreamt from the people I've mentored. And it's, if anyone hasn't done that and they get the opportunity, do, because you'll learn far more than your mentor. Well, I did. Maybe that's a reflection on me. But yeah, I think very much there's a natural way that, and there are some people that are more naturally gifted at it, but I think everybody can learn it and teach it. And I think everyone continues to. And part of being a good leader is recognizing that you've got to continuously learn and do that. That's what's one of the qualities of being a leader is continuously improving, I think.
Yeah, I would agree with Steve that good leaders are also born, but they can be made. And Sally was saying earlier that, you know, she was invested in as a leader and given opportunities and taught, but that doesn't happen at every company, unfortunately. So I would say if you're not getting the opportunity, if you're not given the examples of what good leadership is or courses to continue to grow, invest in yourself. It's really important to do that. Find a coach, find a mentor, somebody you can work with that's going to help you to grow in that area. I see a lot of times companies are throwing people into new leadership positions without the tools. So don't suffer in silence, again, feeling like, I don't know how to do this, I don't know what to do. Get some help and support with that, because that will help you become a much stronger leader.
Yeah, I can remember talking about the imposter syndrome. I can remember being given the opportunity as my first management role, and I worked for Hayes at the time in England, and they were like, you know, come on, Sal, we want you to apply for this. Everybody else was just applying, and I was like, oh, no, I won't be able to do that. And they were like, you're a born leader, people follow you. And I was like, oh, no. And I did, and it all went very well. But I think the game changer for me, and my mom is a school teacher, she said that from being in the playground, I was a born leader, you know. I always remember that. But for me, what was the game changer was actually investing in a coach, and to really, you know, just have that real relationship where you could be so vulnerable, you know, and say, you know, where you felt you were not as good, and just that you know, as you said, Julie, you know, investing in yourself for your people is, and for your company, and if you can get your company to pay for it, even better. You know, it really takes you from good to great, I think, you know, personally.
I think the one thing I would say about having a coach as well is, especially when you've got a team, your entire life becomes about that team, right? Because you want the best for them. Yeah. But like actually going to see my coach once a month means I get 90 minutes to reflect on how my month's gone and where I could have done better and all the rest of it. And I think sometimes as leaders, we forget that because we're too busy worrying about everybody else.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm a coach and I still work with coaches too, because I want to continue to up my game. And it's a great person that is there for you to help you grow. Like you said, Sally, you know, especially if you're in a corporate role or leading your own company, like who do you turn to and have these conversations to say, oh, I'm scared, or I don't know what to do next. You need somebody that's a safe space.
Absolutely.
Voicing these things helps you feel better and be able to move on.
Yeah. I mean, I felt so empowered by my coach. It then led me onto a coaching career. So I was like, I want to give back what she's done for me. I want to do the same for other people. So, and it's very rewarding, as you would say, Julie.
Okay. Anybody got anything else to add for that? Because the next few go on a bit of a tangent. So going out there.
Love a tangent.
I know. All right. So then it was, I think there's a few of you on the call anyway, about what really made you what spurred you on to actually start your own venture, to actually go out there and back yourself to do it?
I might go first if that's okay. For me, it was something that I'd always had in the back of my mind, but never pushed myself to go and do it. And then I was made redundant. So then it was like, you know, it's adversity breeds opportunity, and it forces you to push yourself further out of your comfort zone and try things you wouldn't necessarily try. So after several weeks of interviewing and like slow corporate processes, an opportunity came up for me to explore that through a relationship that I developed. And funnily enough, it was through a coaching relationship and helping people with customer success. And I made the realization it's something I hadn't tried before and something I wanted to do that was different. And, you know, I was lucky enough to be in a position that if it didn't work out over the next 6 months, then that would be okay. And so I could afford to just invest the time and the resources into getting it off the ground. So I'm only I think 6 weeks into it right now, but signed my first customer, and you know the momentum and the speed is there, and the success is already starting to be realized. So it's given me that, again, to get over that imposter syndrome that I was maybe holding me back in the past, to really push myself out there and to do more and to meet more people and put myself out there. So for me, it was a mix of opportunity and adversity that sort of drove me to that. And I'm grateful.
Very calm for 6 weeks in, very calm. Neil, can I ask you a question? Do you think you would, obviously that's what's caused you to do it, but do you think you would have done it ultimately anyway?
Eventually, but I'm also the king of procrastination, so not sure when exactly. And again, it was some of that self-belief piece. It's like, if I'm very happy in my corporate role at LinkedIn, it's hard not to be happy in a place at LinkedIn where it is so inclusive, and it does provide those opportunities to stretch and grow your career. And without that experience, I wouldn't be in the position I am now, in more ways than the one, regardless of the fact they were the ones that made me redundant. But I think if I was comfortable, when you're comfortable, you're less likely to push yourself out of your comfort zone. And if you're in a perceived stable corporate opportunity that is providing many of those things, then I will speak only on my behalf, but I would certainly be a lot less inclined to throw myself out there and to test uncharted waters, just by that alone. So, you know, the adversity and the redundancy definitely pushed me across that, you know, pushed me off the cliff, if you want to, lack of a better word.
I can jump in. I've started a few companies at different times. I've started because I was made redundant, and so I figured now's a good time. I started another one because I just came up with an idea and found a partner to go with. And starting my own coaching business happened because I burned myself out yet again in another job, and I wanted to take some time to learn how to do things differently. And as I was taking some time to figure out what I wanted to do, somebody contacted me and said, can I hire you as a coach? And I thought, well, and then I got another phone call from an organization, thought, I'll just get my ABN and get going. And so I kind of fell into that. And I've got another startup in the side that I'm working on now. And that one is because I really want to change the world. Like most founders, I've got a problem that I feel like needs to be solved. I don't know that I necessarily want to be a founder again, but I have this burning desire to fix this problem. And I think that's a great reason to move into something when you feel passionate about it, because you're going to be spending a heck of a lot of time with it.
I'm very similar to Julie here, I have to say. I've had 2 or 3 of my own businesses before. I got burnt out pedaling too fast, and felt devastated to leave my last business, to be honest, because I've really believed in it, but needed to take some time out and think about what was next for me, but also very, very passionate about coaching. As I said, happened to just get just from my network some coaching assignments. I am actually a qualified coach, I might just add. And then I feel very fortunate. Other work has just come to me, you know, working with you know, probably up to about 100 people, startup businesses, working with the CEOs, COOs and sales leaders who are sort of outgrowing, or the company is outgrowing the sales leader, so trying to upskill them as fast as possible, you know, to take the company from here to here. So it's kind of just, for me, the last one has just come very organically, and I had wanted a bit more time out, but you know, due to COVID, I was like, better take the work, you know, because we don't know how long this is going to last. So I feel very, very lucky that things are going my way. So less strategic, more just happened.
Steve, you've had 3 businesses. Do you want to talk about that?
It's been a very long time since I started that now. I think I haven't worked with someone for probably 16, 17 years or something. So about 17 years. I'm pretty sure the reason I started my first one was not dissimilar to the reason I started in recruitment, not dissimilar to the reason I moved to Australia. It wasn't particularly planned. I moved to Australia because I was bored in London. I moved into recruitment because I couldn't find another job, and they offered me one when I went to a recruitment agency. And I think I started a business pretty much because I'm completely and utterly incompetent when it comes to office politics. And it was really hindering my career, and I really couldn't see myself getting anywhere. So it was kind of, well, maybe I should just go and sit in the corner and do it on my own. So I think the other thing is, I think the genuine reason is huge influence from my father. My father was a dentist, and he ended up developing an injury which stopped him being able to work as a dentist, didn't know how to do anything else, and he went off and started multiple businesses in some of the most, which I won't go into now, some of the most random things you could ever imagine. So I watched my dad go from being in a stable career, having 3 kids at private school, to suddenly having nothing and just making it work and just doing all sorts of stuff. And I just, you know, everyone emulates and well, not everyone, that's not true. Most people look up to their parents, particularly sons to their fathers, from a work perspective when you're my age, and go, I want to be like him. So I think a lot of it came from that, I think. But why I keep doing it, I think it's because I found I'm better at that than the office politics.
All right. If anyone from attendees has got any questions, feel free to chuck them in the chat. We're on the last question so far of questions that were submitted before. And that was around, for anyone that's thinking about doing it, but using the pandemic as an excuse, is it the best or the worst time to do it right now? I think just personally, I remember having a conversation with Steve You very kindly reminded me that it was a great thing that I was single and stuck at home, because it meant that I wasn't spending any money when I was starting a business. So in fact, it was the best time to start a business.
I don't know if I said it quite like that. I think I think it's like children. There's never a right time. You just, and I'm still not sure it was the right time when I had my two 10, 12 years ago. But I think you've just got to, when you feel ready to take the step, when you can take the step, it is a step. And once you've taken it once, it's a hell of a lot easier to take it over and over again, no question. And I don't think there's a right or a wrong time. I don't think you need the pandemic excuse, but it could be an accelerator. I don't think there's any, the best thing about startups and running businesses, there's no rules. You make your own rules. There's no right, there's no wrong. No one can tell you how to do it. You've got to do it your way. And that if you do it your way, it will probably work. If you try and do it the way someone else tells you, well, that's their business, not yours. And I think you've got to remember, you've got to be true to yourself in doing this. And if you're not, that's when the problems tend to occur. Doesn't mean you can't take advice, because we all need to do that pretty much consistently. But you've got to have some sort of core belief in yourself that this is, I think you just get to that moment where you go, you know what, I'm going to do it, just like Neil did.
Mm. Yeah, I would agree with that. I think there's a couple of things that need to sort of fall into place. Well, most certainly that was the case for me. And I think if the pandemic is one of those variables for you under your sort of set of circumstances, then fantastic. But for me, I think one of the crucial things was having the right business partner. We've been running this agency for over 18 months now, and I could not imagine doing it with anybody else other than my business partner, Aunt Melda. We've got two completely different skill sets, but we could not be more different. I think anyone who sort of knows us would say as much, except our values are absolutely shared. It's the one thing that is absolutely locked in, not movable, changeable, and I think that has just that's really set us up to succeed. And while it's early days, I just know the power of that, because while we may sort of have a different point of view in the furniture and the this and the that, when it comes to the important things and our people first and foremost, and the types of clients that we partner with, there's just it's the easiest decisions, because our values just govern every decision. So I think that's been a crucial thing for us. And regardless of a pandemic or not a pandemic, I think that's just because this pandemic will pass. But the business partner that you choose will be, will last longer than that. So I think that's an important thing. If you indeed, decide to have a business partner, not everybody does, but in my case, it's just made the world of difference.
I think also it's important to make sure that you've got the right product market fit, and timing, whether it's pandemic or not, is less relevant if you've got the right product market fit and you've done your homework to make sure that you've actually got a viable business. There's so many people that I've worked with that get really excited about an idea, and I've had ideas as well that just weren't viable in terms of a business. And so that's the most important thing whenever the time is. And it might mean that given whatever your business is, it's better to start in a pandemic, or it might mean that it's the wrong time. But always looking at that product market fit and making sure that you figure out, is this actually a viable business, and fitting it with your lifestyle too. What is the lifestyle that I am looking to live, along with the values that CK was talking about, tied together with then how much profit does this business need to make, and can we get there with what we're looking to build?
We've had a couple of questions come in, and the next one I think kind of builds on what we've just been saying. So us interested in the panel's observations of people within their organizations and how they've dealt with challenges that 2020 has thrown their employees. So how are you helping, as leaders, how can we help employees deal with difficult situations and change and help them navigate it, especially, I guess, in this remote first world when we're used to being sat next to people, and now that's kind of been taken away?
I think Julie touched on this earlier in terms of, bringing the people together and being very, very clear and transparent on the why and the what needs to be done is really, really important. I remember having to do that in April this year, and you know, just making sure, as I say, you're very transparent. Everybody understands why these decisions are being made due to due to COVID. I think you get much more buy-in and understanding from people, and then obviously trying to ensure that that everybody really has, you know, I was in the park yesterday. I'm going really off here, but I was in the park yesterday walking the dog, as you do, taking half an hour out, and this lady comes over to me, a lovely Irish lady comes over to me, and she started talking about mental health, and she gave me she was trying to raise some money for some children's mental health. And she said she was giving me some stats on mental health this year due to the pandemic, and I can remember back giving some clear messaging and you know, giving news that nobody wanted to hear, and being so mindful of how this was going to affect not just the people in front of me on the call like this, but their families. And so we made sure as an organization, we took responsibility to have follow-up meetings, you know, touch points, you know, one-on-ones, other smaller group meetings, to ensure that everybody was handling the news as well as possible. And so that was a really hard, well thought out, I would like to think, piece of work that we had to do as an organisation and as a leadership team. So not the easiest thing.
You're really right to say. I think a lot of times when employees aren't handling situations, it's not necessarily them that's not handling it, it's the situation that they've got at home and the family situation.
Yeah.
It doesn't necessarily have to be a pandemic. As a leader, you deal with this all the time. You know, if you have a business that's going through accelerated growth, as we've talked about earlier, the pressures of that, and some people don't handle that very well, and they're probably different to people who aren't handling the pandemic. But as a leader, you're always going to have a team of people. Some are going to be handling whatever it is you're going through well, and some are not. And I think as long as you recognize that and you take the time to speak to those people and find out what it is that's causing them not handling that, which is often not the situation. The situation might be the trigger, but it's not usually the reason. So you've got to delve into that, find out what that is, and see what you can do, and come up with a solution. The solution may be that they leave, maybe they stay, maybe they have counselling, maybe they spend more time with them. There's an infinite amount of solutions. But unless you take the time to actually get to the root cause, you can't treat the problem without the cause, as is everything in life. And I think that's definitely a key part of it, Steve. And I'm so glad we're here talking about mental health right now, having been through a period of that myself throughout the pandemic, but also 6 years ago. I think the key to that is also as leaders or business owners or founders that we model that behavior ourselves too. So if we are experiencing those things at home, that we take the time out, or we are working shorter days and we're communicating our story to share that it's okay to not be okay sometimes. And, you know, I think that's a really powerful message when it comes from an owner or a leader or a team lead or whatever that role of responsibility looks like. I think that form of leadership is so important. It goes understated in many businesses today and leads to so many problems.
I would agree with everything that's said, and I would add on, if the question was specifically how do we handle this now, make sure you're having the communications and do Zoom calls and visual communications. I was speaking with somebody who's a HR leader at a large company, and she said it's very difficult now because when you're in the office, you see people walking down the hall, so you can see if somebody's kind of shuffling their feet or hunched over and a little bit different than they normally are. So it's really important, as much as we're getting some Zoom fatigue, to make sure to continue to have those conversations where you can see face to face how people are doing, see what it looks like, and specifically asking the question, how are you? And if somebody, you know, says, oh, I'm fine, and brushes it off, ask the question again and say, no, really, how are you? And really dig deeper to get that information, because it's very easy just to, you know, shove it aside and not really get into it.
Yeah, it's really quite interesting when you do sort of make the time, because when everyone sort of like went into lockdown, Ant and I sort of made time to connect with all of our people. It was actually just a call, not a Zoom call, with your scheduled time in everybody's diaries, and literally just to ask the question, how this is what weird, like, how's it going? What do you know, what's happening, and how do you feel? And I honestly thought it's the right thing to do to schedule some time and check in with everybody. But I honestly thought that we'd just get a, yeah, thanks, I'm fine. And you know, the call would sort of end 2 or 3 minutes in, and each one of those calls lasted so much longer than I had thought. And I learned a lot out of that experience, because I thought, well, let's make the time, let's do the right thing. But the way that people responded, they made the use of that time. They really shared how they were feeling. They were talking about things that they're concerned about. Some things we can fix, some things we can't. I mean, but the point was just to facilitate the conversation. And I think, if anything, just let them know that we actually want to know, and we actually care. So I was quite humbled and quite blown away at how people responded, and just made use of the time that we had allowed for. So that was quite interesting. And then the other point that I just quickly wanted to make, which you've all raised around mental health, and just making that something that we should be talking about all the time, and just kind of sharing when, or just making it, normalizing it. And I think mental health affects absolutely everybody. And recently my husband he was actually hospitalized for 4 days. He had a panic attack. And actually, when we got into hospital, as the day was unfolding, I was like, oh, this isn't just I'm probably going to have to cancel that 2 o'clock meeting, because this is going to take a little bit longer than what I thought. And I shared that experience with the whole agency, because I was like, I just want to normalize it. I just was, oh, this is what happened to Elle, you know, like, because no one's this life, you know, no one's immune from having those points where it just is that little thing that then just kind of breaks you, and you're just completely overwhelmed. And I wanted to go, gosh, this is what happened to somebody that I deeply love and care about. And I socialize it and talk about it whenever I can, because I just think the more people experience it, and the more common it is, the more people can go, yeah, I feel a bit like that as well. Or actually, yeah, it's okay for me to put up my hand and go, yeah, I feel a bit like that, because that's life. Everyone is going to have a point where they feel a little bit broken, or a bit overwhelmed, or a bit vulnerable. And you need your tribe, whoever those people are, to kind of rally around you and give you that support.
I think, CK, weren't you looking at doing some mental health first aid training that they were putting together for media agencies?
Yeah. That actually takes place next week. So it was just a call out to kind of CEOs and, you know, and people kind of leading, particularly in our industry, to actually do a first aid course in mental health. And I was like, it's brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant. So I'm really looking forward to it, and taking what I learn and sort of sharing it far and wide.
All right. Okay, we've had one other question come in from Q&A. So I've said that the number one blocker to starting their own business is confidence. Any tips for building up confidence before going all in and committing 100% to starting up? Is there, for example, a way to prototype your way to a startup, which I quite like? I like the idea of prototyping your way to something.
An appointment with Julie, and then book an appointment with Sally, and then they'll be sweet.
For me, I think, just because my examples maybe is slightly different, mine was sort of, I was pushed into it, but I think the thing that gave me the belief, if I was to just think of this myself, and again, sitting in that comfort of and security of a corporate job, I wouldn't have done it, but happen chance put me in that situation. But what helped me qualify that this is what was the right reason is because I had spent a lot of time developing a community in customer success, particularly here in Sydney, but more broadly globally as well, and connecting with other customer success leaders and customer success managers, doing coaching and mentoring for individual contributors looking for that leadership opportunity. And that gave me the belief that there was a market for it. People were willing to pay to listen to me talk. Like, who knew? And I think for me, just spending that time networking, either through LinkedIn or in community events or in the existing communities in your specific industry or product, you'd just be amazed at people that are willing to help, to listen, to challenge you, to make sure you're seeing blind spots that you never thought that you could see for yourself. It was invaluable to me and giving me that belief that my background and experience and my leadership style, there was a right fit to go and try that. And so that for me would be sort of the biggest sort of defining moment for me after being made redundant that gave me the belief to go and do it.
I think to add in a few things that can help boost your confidence is remembering that it's your mindset. It's all about your mindset. So if you are continually telling yourself, I can't do this, you're not going to have the confidence. A good way to build up that confidence is if you're telling yourself, I can't do this, or I don't know how to do this, ask yourself, is that really true? Because the likelihood is you have some really good proof points that you actually can. And the more you can focus on the things you can do instead of the things you can't do, the more you'll start to believe in yourself and build your confidence.
I love that.
Yeah, I've done an exercise with somebody before where you literally, to try and get over imposter syndrome, literally, as Julie said, write all of the achievements you've done, whether they be, you know, from a professional or personal life. Write them all down, and then you'll suddenly realize how wonderful you are, you know. It's a great, easy exercise to do, and you suddenly go, oh wow, you know.
I love that, Sally. And actually there's a great initiative that Google were running and facilitating for businesses that represent underrepresented groups in the corporate world, and it's called I Am Remarkable, and it's all about extracting that, exactly that, from you, about why you're unique, why you're uniquely you, and what makes you remarkable compared to the person next to you. We're all got those moments, but how do we help people tell their story? And I think, you know, check it out. That video made me cry multiple times every time I watch it. But that is a great exercise. And coming back to Julie's point about mindset, it really does set you thinking that I can overcome anything because look what I've done in the past.
I'm going to check out that video after this. We don't have any other questions in there. So do you guys have any questions or anything you want to touch on that we haven't brought up? I'm really looking at Steve on this one.
I can see that you are. I know, I can feel it. I don't know why. I feel like you're all looking at me. Maybe it's because you are on the screen. A question for the panelists.
Yeah.
I think an interesting question for the panelists would probably be, what was their greatest, and I don't mean this in a regretful point of view, but the mistake that made them learn the most? I think that's always an interesting question. It's early days for you, Neil, so well, maybe not as a lead business owner, but you were still leadershiping in what you've talked about before. So the thing that you actually just cringe at, but it fundamentally changed the way, maybe even a belief, maybe not a belief because it's quite hard to change your belief, but it was something that powerful. It really changed you. Most people have had one or two. I've had quite a lot, but who would like to start with that one? I think it's always an interesting question.
I'll start. One of my early lessons was I was trying to build a team. This is a few years ago now. I was trying to build a team quickly to deal with the growth we were going through. And I've always been, I mean, I started out in recruitment. I was in recruitment for 11 years. I should have known better. But there was somebody who came onto my team, and this individual was coming in as a manager. And the references were all great and everything, but there was something I wasn't, you know, I wasn't sure about, but I was desperate, for want of a better word, and this individual is immediately available. I was like, great, get them in. And that individual was a really bad egg. And yet, great, strong performer, but a bad egg. And my goodness, did that take a lot of my time, you know, to then start managing them out of the business, you know, because the negative effect that individual had on the rest of the team, and not just the immediate team, the other teams was bad. So that was a big.
Because you would have seen people do that how many times in your time in recruitment? Because I see that, and then you still go and do it. And I've done it too. If it makes you feel any better, I've done it twice as well, so that's even worse. But it's funny, isn't it, how we do these things?
Yeah, it was a hard lesson.
It does blow me away how long it takes for people to manage people out of a business, or to weed out the bad eggs, especially in startups. They have a family mentality, and families let family members get away with a lot. And so that for me was the biggest lesson in a startup, is not to take my time.
I always get told in a startup, because we always start up saying we're a family, and so you have to be a team. So if you think in a team, you put your best players first, you all support each other, and you always want each other to do well. But it's also not okay to not perform, and you can be kind of, and I quite like that as another analogy. So you've still got each other's backs, but you've got to perform, and you've got to help each other to win.
Yeah. And, to kind of summarize all of that, saying that hire slow, fire fast. And another thing that tends to happen is then we spend the majority of our time on the weakest links.
Yes.
It's not very much, instead of spending our time on the people who can really achieve and make a difference in the business. So spend your time there instead.
That's like people who spend all this time trying to work on their weaknesses, which I don't disagree with, but I think if you work on your strengths, that's far more intelligent. Why be just average at everything when you can excel at something? And I think it's the same thing with your people, right? And we do tend to do it. You do have to remind yourself, you need to be spending more time with your top performer, not your worst performer. You need to just work out how to move them on, or find another way to make them a top performer quickly. And if they can't do it quickly, it's time to go.
Yeah, and to add on to that, Steve, we used to say that you've got to be good at everything, right? That's how we were brought up. That's how we were taught. That's a weakness. You've got to get better at that. But now the way people are talking about everything in business is, if it's not a strength, hire it out. Because especially if you're running a business, you're going to have the biggest impact on things that you're really strong at. So the things that you're not, don't waste your time.
Yes, absolutely. And the more hiring, the better, I say.
Yeah, I think it's about appropriate casting and kind of, complementary sort of skill sets. So yeah, you don't have to focus necessarily on kind of areas of development when you've got your casting right. So everybody in the team really does get to sort of excel, shine, and everyone has an equal role to play on a project or in a meeting, or on kind of working a solution out. And I think that's just something I've just seen again and again, when that casting is delivered just in a really sort of considered way, everyone just kind of like feels like they've had a hand in the success. And I think that's just so good for culture as well. So I think the casting and the complementary sort of skill set pieces is really essential.
Agreed. All right, we have 4 minutes left, and we've finished the last two panels with getting people to tell us their one piece of career advice that they want to share with everyone else. So maybe if we do that now, we can wrap up on time. Who wants to go first? First piece of career advice. You've all done the videos as well, right? So you should all know the answers.
I can't remember the video now. It was about a week ago.
We'll come to you last then.
I'll go ahead and start. Mine was, don't be the pooper scooper. So don't pick up all the shit. Because if you're constantly trying to please everybody by picking up all the shit jobs and doing everything small, you're not going to get the big projects and take things forward.
Mine was communication. I thought I was an extremely good communicator and stakeholder manager coming into my time at LinkedIn, and Sally, you'll appreciate this one. That turned out to be utter rubbish. I had to quickly up my game and believe in my communication ability, and to communicate often and early, and not wait for the finished product before I then start talking about things. So that for me was the biggest learning, certainly in larger corporates, but equally important if you're leading a startup and making sure the right people know the right information at the right time. You'll be ever grateful to yourself or your future self if you start that now.
Mine is learn to say no. I was very late in that learning.
I'm still learning that one.
gosh, so many different pieces. I think you've got to be comfortable in your own skin, and you've got to be comfortable with being yourself. And I think on the flip side of that, you need somebody that knows you, that will hold you accountable.
That's a great one. I like that one. I think the one I would probably, I'm trying to think of the right way to word this. I know people tell you to do what you enjoy and all this kind of thing. I'm not necessarily a big believer in that. I think sometimes if you do what you enjoy work-wise, you don't enjoy it so much. I think do what you're really, really good at, and then you'll really begin to enjoy it because you're really good at it. And I think the more if you're good at something, you'll just get better and better and better. Whereas if you really enjoy doing something and then you start doing it all the time, you might get sick of it. And that's a dangerous game. And I've seen, the whole passion project thing go wrong for so many people. And I very nearly, before this last business, went and started all sorts of other businesses because I thought I shouldn't do the same thing again. One of them was going to be a Chinese medical tourism business. So I'm glad we didn't do that one. But I then came back to the conclusion that really for 25 years I've recruited. So I should just carry on doing that because that's what I know how to do. I think that's probably my advice. And I'm so glad I did, by the way.
That's awesome. Guys, 3 o'clock, perfect timing. Thank you all for your insights and joining us and just giving us your time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. That was awesome.
Pleasure.
Thank you.